I'm Willem and this is a 2014 Mercedes S400 Hybrid, and today I'm going to review it. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about the background of the car, have a look at the exterior and the interior, and then I'm going to take it for a drive. If you have not done so yet, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Click the like button as well. The more subscribers I get, the more cool cars I get, so I'd really appreciate it if you can subscribe to my channel. This specific car I borrowed from Club9 in Cape Town. They're situated on the corner of Strand and Breer Street. They offer a cool wide selection of classic cars and sports cars for sale, so go check them out. So the Mercedes S-Class was actually first introduced in 1972 as a special class variant of Mercedes cars and the pinnacle of the luxury sedan range. The S in Mercedes S-Class actually stands for Sonderklasse in German, which means special class. But it's quite funny to me, being Afrikaans in South Africa, because Sonderklasse actually means without any class. This is however not the case with the Mercedes S-Class, always being a car built to showcase what the Mercedes of the future would be like. Then when looking at the front of the car, you'll notice this beautiful Mercedes grille covered in chrome. I think it looks pretty cool and it suits a car like this. This car is obviously meant to be a very luxury sedan, chrome everywhere, and something that needs to stand out from the crowd but be a little bit subtle as well. And I think this really does it, especially with this old school Mercedes emblem at the top there as well, which a lot of cars don't necessarily have, but they obviously keep that in the Mercedes S-Class car. And then looking at the headlights of this car, you can see these LEDs everywhere along the headlamps. Xenons in the middle as well, and it says LED intelligent lighting system there, just to show you that this is obviously the pinnacle of LED lights that Mercedes made at the time. So when looking at the wheels of the Mercedes S400 Hybrid, you can see that these aren't massive 20, 21, 22 inch wheels. These are 18 inch wheels. I think the color suits the car well. Obviously it matches the car's color as well. One thing that is pretty cool to me on these wheels are these little air valve covers, which has a small Mercedes logo on top of them. I don't think you see that in a lot of cars, and it shows obviously that this is a premium product. So looking at the back of the Mercedes S400 Hybrid, you'd obviously see the first thing is the shape of the back, of course. It makes this little lip at the back here, probably for aerodynamics, but I think it looks pretty cool. It all blends very nicely into the car and the body shape. And then you'll see this S400 logo and then the hybrid logo at the other side there to show that it's a hybrid model. It also has this chrome strip going at the back there to show that it's a premium Mercedes product. They love chrome. And also moving down from that, you'll see these tail lamps. I quite like the way these tail lamps blend into the car. The red color looks very cool, and it's got these LEDs, 4 LED strips moving along there, and I just really like the look of them. It's a little bit different from most other Mercedeses. And then moving down from that, you'll see these exhaust tips as well. So these exhaust tips obviously are not real, like a lot of cars this time during the 2014, 15, 16 era. They made fake exhaust tips, a lot of them. The exhausts are actually deep inside there, and I really don't like it when cars do fake exhaust tips, and this is no exception. So in opening up the boot of this car, it reveals this massive boot. The Mercedes S-Class is obviously a very big sedan. You'd expect a big boot, and this does have that. I mean, it's a really big space. You should be able to fit 7,000 golf clubs in here, so you'd be fine with that. So coming back to the front of the car, we just open up the bonnet and it reveals a 3.5 litre V6 engine. This engine is mated to a 20 kilowatt electrical motor as well, and in total it puts out around 330 horsepower. The normal standard engine, the V6, puts out around 220 kilowatts, which is around 300 horsepower. And the one thing you will notice, this engine bay is covered in a lot of plastic, but it is massive when you open it up. I mean, the space here looks insane. I don't think I've seen an engine bay as big as this. And the V6 motor is actually a little bit bigger than I actually expected it to be, which is quite interesting. So in stepping into the Mercedes S400 Hybrid's interior, the first thing you notice is that this interior is made up of two things. So one is technology and the other one is comfort, and it's got tons of each of those. So firstly, starting with the technology, the first thing you'd see here are these two massive 12.3 inch LCD screens, or TFT screens, which was something that a lot of cars didn't have in 2014. I think the S-Class was the first car to have these two massive displays right in front of you, which is obviously technology that they started to use in all of their cars going forward. These screens obviously offer a ton of features. It's called the command system, where you sort of command everything in the car. So you can change your air conditioning, you can change the lighting of the car, you can change how your seats feel. You have seats that you can pretty much change everything in this car from the command infotainment system. The infotainment system is managed by this little swivel wheel at the bottom here, which you see in a lot of Mercedes as well, and a lot of cars nowadays. And it's got this little like pad which almost looks like a ball box that you put your hand on. And also you rest your hand on this little thing that feels a little bit like a ball box, if you know cricket. If you put this ball box thing back, it reveals this little keypad here, which you can use obviously to phone someone, or call someone. It's just for a phone. This is a little bit old school nowadays. You don't see that anymore in cars, but in 2014 I think Mercedes still thought their customer base was probably a little bit of an older gentleman or lady who drove these cars, and they still prefer to use an old school keypad to phone someone. Covering that up, you'll see a lot of buttons here at the bottom here. There's buttons for your sport mode, your comfort mode, to raise the car obviously with the air suspension. You've got your volume rocker here at the bottom, and you've got navigation, radio, media, telephone, and some settings to adjust the car and the way it drives as well. Moving up from that, you have this little cover here which reveals this little area for your DVDs or CDs, which obviously a lot of modern cars don't use anymore, but in this car still had. And a lot of actual buttons here at the top here. So obviously if you don't want to use a swivel wheel or the screens, it can be a little bit tedious obviously when you use it or while you're driving. You can just use these buttons as well. So these buttons have the auto button, it's got the aircon, it's got your menu setting, it's got pretty much most of the standard things you'd pretty much want to use on the move as well. Then looking up from that, you have these little air vents, which I think is probably one of the coolest things in the car. They're so small and it looks like little aeroplane vents or something. I just really like the way they feel. Below them you have these little knobs that you can use to put it up or down. Well, I mean put the air up or down, and when you press them in they sort of hide away, which is something that's pretty cool, and they really feel good quality as well. A lot of Mercedes products at the time felt a little bit plasticky, but they did obviously spend a lot more money on this car, so all the materials actually feels quite well and quite sturdy and strong, which is really nice in a car like this, and you'd obviously expect it paying what you're paying for it. So one of the other things you'll notice when sitting in this car is the steering wheel. The steering wheel feels really nice in your hands. It's got a beautiful Mercedes logo at the in the middle here, and it also has some buttons here to control some of your infotainment settings, as well as obviously your phone and your volume and going through the menus and stuff. You also have these two paddles at the back here, which feels really good quality, and they feel nice and like almost like steel or aluminium, I assume. And then the general shape of the steering wheel is quite strange to me. I somewhere heard that it looks like a clown smiling, and it still looks to me like a clown smiling. I really don't like the look of it. It's a little bit weird to me, and this massive gap here at the bottom is a little bit strange. That's just my personal preference. It also says Mercedes-Benz here at the bottom, but it's got this font that I think just doesn't really fit with the car. It's got this weird font. I don't know why, but it doesn't look like any of the other fonts in this car, which is quite strange to me. So looking at the practicality of this car, obviously this is a very big car, and it's a big spacious interior here. You don't feel claustrophobic at all. One of the first things you'll see is obviously you have your armrest here, which is this little armrest thing that you've seen in a lot of Mercedeses. It opens up from the one side, reveals a little space here with two USB ports, and where you can put your wallet or your phone or whatever. And when you close it, you'll see there's a button on this side as well, which opens it. From the other side, it reveals the same space, which is something pretty cool, and I think Mercedes really like to brag about that, because not a lot of cars do that. And then in the middle here, you've got this center console that opens up two cup holders here at the bottom, which is revealed right there. On the right hand side, you've got plenty of space to store some things here at the bottom as well. And yeah, obviously you've got a cubbyhole here on the left hand side, which is not really too big. The service book takes up most of the space, but at least it's there, and it's still enough space for most of the things. So Mercedes S-Class customers are usually customers who sit in the back of these cars when they're being driven by someone. One of the first things you notice is if you're too lazy to close the door properly, you can just pull it lightly shut. And it's a soft closed door, which is pretty cool. Not a lot of cars have that. I think this Mercedes S-Class comes standard with that. And then yeah, sitting in the back of this car, you can feel that it's pretty comfortable. There's quite a lot of leg room. It's not as much as I would have expected. I know you can spec this car out to have seats that actually fold back, and it's almost like a bed in the back here. I think that's the extended wheelbase one as well, but it's pretty good enough here. But like I said, it's not as big as I would have imagined. There's practicality wise, there's this little flap that opens up at the back here where you can store some things, obviously like your laptop or tablet or whatever you have if you want to do business in the back of this car. And then in the front here, you'd see you have your own two air vents that you can control. You got climate control. You can adjust the climate, obviously adjust the fan and everything down here. And you've got a little flap that opens up here with a 12-volt socket as well, and a cigarette lighter if you'd like to smoke a cigarette in the back of this car. And then also you have some controls here on the right hand side. You can open and close the windows, of course, on the left on the right here. And when you pull it up, There's also a sun visor that pulls up, which is pretty cool if you don't want anyone from the outside world to enter your realm in the back of this car. And yeah, I think that's pretty cool. The interior space, obviously there's a lot of leather in here as well, which is very nice. Seats are just as comfortable as the ones in the front. So opening up the middle center armrest, this pulls down here, so you've got a nice armrest if you want to go on long journeys. Opening this up, it reveals some space here if you want to store your wallet or keys or whatever you have in here. And then also pressing this button over here, you've got two cup holders if you want to enjoy a drink in the back of this car, which a lot of people probably do. And yeah, so it's quite practical in the back here, not as luxurious as you can spec it. This is a pretty standard base model, but you can spec it way up, but it's at a pretty nice place to be in. Another thing you'd notice is this little flap that opens up here, which has a little mirror so you can see yourself in here if you want to go to a meeting, if you want to put makeup on or whatever you want to do. That's pretty cool. And it's got a little light here and also a reading light at the top here, which you can use if you want to read a book or yeah, do some work in the back of this car. So how's it like to drive the Mercedes S400 Hybrid? This car is really smooth to drive. Like, it is so soft. You literally don't feel any bumps in the road. I have this car in comfort airmatic mode at the moment. Obviously this car has air suspension, so it smooths out any idea of a bump that comes in the road, and you literally don't feel it. I'm sure the camera would be pretty stable now as well, where usually we would be hopping around on this road, but we're not at the moment, and it's just really a relaxing drive. For a person buying a Mercedes S-Class, obviously that is what they expect. This, however, is the hybrid version. So usually the top of the line one, or the standard top of the line one, would be the S500 one that most people would buy, and that's got a brilliant V8 engine. This one, like I said before, has the V6 engine mated to the electric motor as well, so it's putting out 330 horsepower, which isn't really that much in a big car like this. I can put it this way, it's definitely enough power to move you around fast enough, but once you get into the higher revs, you actually hear that engine a little bit, where apparently I haven't driven the S500 before, but it's a lot smoother and a lot punchier from the get-go. If I switch this car into sport mode, like I'm doing right now, got a few turns coming up, floor it a little bit. I don't know if you can hear it on the camera, but you can definitely hear it rev. The car, however, the power is really enough. This car is 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 6.8 seconds, and the top speed is 250 kilometers per hour. I'm not sure if that is limited to 250. I think that is the actual top speed. I don't think it can do a lot more than that with the power output. This car weighing 2 tons, 330 horsepower isn't that much because it's a 2-ton car, so you would expect more power. Obviously would be a much faster moving car and smoother, but we had it up on the highway, and once you hit speed, it actually moves along very briskly, and actually a little bit faster than we expected. So this car is a 7-speed automatic gearbox, and it's got these paddle shifters. So I've put it in manual mode, switched on sport mode, so let's see how these paddles work. Brakes are working well. Well, this car drives pretty nicely for a 2-ton sedan, I have to say. It's a lot better than I expected. So even though this car being a hybrid, we have a little piece of open road here, so I'm going to try and launch it and see what happens when we do that. So the car is in sport mode. Let's build up some revs. So yeah, like I said, it's not the fastest car in the world. It does 0 to 100 in 6.8 seconds, which is enough. I mean, it's probably as much as hot hatches of the time in 2014, but hot hatches nowadays are a lot faster than that, if you're talking about the top spec ones. So yeah, it's enough power. But I mean, a guy who's buying this car, or a girl who's buying this car, or the person who's buying this car is buying this car for its comfort levels. This being the hybrid model, it is really soft when you're cruising around at lower speeds. Another feature that this car has, obviously with the electric motor, is you can use the electric motor on its own, but you can try and take a guess how many miles you get just using the electric motor in this car. 2. It actually does 2 miles on the electric motor alone, which is actually quite ridiculous. Obviously, looking at modern standards of cars, you have cars driving on pure electric power doing 300-400 miles, which is the standard, or not standard nowadays, but that is what cars can drive nowadays. So this car doing 2 miles on an electric motor is quite funny now. But back in 2014, a lot of the car manufacturers tried to put out cars that it's not really using the technology, but it's showing that they can use the technology. This electric motor is used to put a little bit of extra speed in the normal standard V6 motor, and just to show that they can put an electric motor in the car and to adjust the economy levels of this car. However, I'm doing currently at around 10.6 liters per 100 kilometers, which isn't really that good considering this is a hybrid model car. So like a lot of luxury sedans from the German automobile makers like Mercedes and BMW and Audi, this car is a victim of depreciation. When this car came out new, this specific model was retailing for 1.2 million rand, which is really crazy considering this specific car is currently retailing for 450,000 rand. That means this car lost half of its value, over half of its value in 6 years, which is really crazy if you think about it. So back to the price of this car. Like I said, this car retails for 450,000 rand, which is really not a lot for the amount of car that you're getting for the price. Depreciation obviously is a lot because these cars tend to get very expensive when they get older, so you need to make sure that you get a great model and something that's been looked after and has a full service history and all that. And if you can find one of those, it's not too bad. However, this one is the hybrid model, so with an electric motor it can be a little bit costly in the long run. So if you want something like this, just make sure you get a good model and something that's been really well looked after. So thanks everyone for watching the review today. That's it from me. I hope you guys have a great day further.